Welcome to NBA Jam Tatman QC on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka!
Happy little games. If you were a young whippersnapper who grew up during the golden age of arcades, one thing that was synonymous with the various neon-colored rooms of glory were the side-scrolling beat-em-ups. If you happened to venture into movie theaters around that same time, something else that captivated audiences all across the world were the various martial arts flicks. Some good, some bad, but they all had one thing in common, and that was action. It didn't take long for arcade manufacturers to meld these two types of entertainment together, which sometimes produced an unprecedented hit. Today, we are talking about the spinning sword-wielding, spiky-haired hero known as Kid Niki, Radical Ninja. What was the inspiration behind this arcade game? What were the major changes between the North American and Japanese releases? Let's find out as we learn about the history of Kid Niki, Radical Ninja. When it comes to learning about the history of Kid Niki, Radical Ninja, one game that needs to be mentioned that defined the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre, which is 1984's Irem arcade classic Kung Fu Master. This was designed by Takashi Nishiyama, who would soon leave the company and work for his competitor Capcom and helped create the Street Fighter franchise. He was inspired by the boss fights in Kung Fu Master and wanted to create a one-on-one fighter around this concept. When it comes to Kid Niki though, it's a bit tough to learn who was behind this unique title. No names were listed in the credits, but one thing I have been able to uncover is that it was inspired by the success of 1984's Karate Kid movie. The look of Yanchamaru, or Kid Niki, was heavily inspired by the original Dragon Ball manga. As I've mentioned in previous videos, Japanese companies, and to a certain extent American companies as well, wanted to keep their programmers hidden due to poaching from other companies. The men in black at the company of Irem decided to take the basic concept behind Kung Fu Master, and due to the success of the Karate Kid, instead of a grown man attempting to rescue his girlfriend, they decided it should be a teenager so that younger players could relate to the protagonist a bit more. Kid Niki, Radical Ninja actually started out life as 1986's Japanese arcade game Kaiketsu Yanchamaru. The game runs on the same hardware as Kung Fu Master, which was the Irem-62 board with some minor tweaks. Kaiketsu Yanchamaru does feature some small differences between its American counterpart, such as the text being translated into English, as well as the enemies having smaller eyes. When releasing it in North America, Data East distributed this title, but certain changes were made. Kid Niki himself went through a makeover. Gone was a more subdued hairstyle, including a top knot, and in its place was wild spikes and a ponytail in the back, letting everyone know he was a punk rock Radical Ninja. Speaking of Radical Ninja, this title was only used in the North American release. There were also changes made to the voices that various enemies speak.
Out! Kawaku! You fool!
The North American release also included mid-stage checkpoints, whereas the Japanese version saw you going all the way back to the beginning of the stage if you died. Kid Niki, Radical Ninja sliced and diced its way into arcades in North America in 1987. As the story goes, our hero with the heart of gold, Kid Niki, is training at the totally tubular ninja school when a flying bird is shot down with an arrow and lands at Niki's feet. Attached to the bird is a note telling you that Princess Margot is being held by the Stone Wizard. After bursting through the wall, Niki yells, "We'll help you," and sets out on a quest to save the day. It's up to you to face all of the enemies and rescue Princess Margot. Speaking of the story though, in the Japanese version, this storyline is completely missing. This is a 1 or 2 player hack and slash game that takes place over 8 levels with a boss at the end of each one. The controls are easy to get to grips with. You have a button to spin Niki's sword in front of him, and pressing it repeatedly will keep the sword spinning. While this is a powerful attack, it does lack in the range department. You also have a jump button which allows Niki to jump up, left, or right. Thankfully, you can change direction in mid-flight. Niki also has the ability to squat under high attacks, and pushing up will allow Niki to climb various ladders or tree trunks. This is a one-hit wonder type of game, which means there is no life bar, and one hit and you lose a life, sending you back to the start of the level or to the mid-level checkpoint in the American version. The Japanese version has no checkpoint, so it's immediately back to the start of the level. You also have to contend with the timer, which counts down rather quickly. There are various power-ups in the game, including silver bells, which allows you to throw ninja stars every time you swing your sword. There are also gold bells, which sees an object spin around the player, and any enemy who is struck by it is instantly killed. Similar to the ninja stars, this only lasts for a small period of time. Coins can also be picked up for bonus points. After defeating a boss, scrolls are dropped, and upon collecting them, you are awarded even more bonus points. The action is hot and heavy, with little to no time to get your bearings. It's not as bad as, say, Rolling Thunder or Ghosts and Goblins, but it's a bit difficult in its own right. The enemies are vast and varied, much more so than, say, Kung Fu Master. They also attack you from all directions, so you best be on your toes. There are various foxes with different attacks, bugs, flying squirrels, birds, frogs, and a whole lot more. The game is clearly not a straight-up ninja-style action game, but more of a zany, wacky game, which helps set itself apart from the rest of the other arcade games. When attacking the enemies, for example, they will be flung off the screen as if you suddenly became Superman. The music is very catchy, although it only lasts for about 10 seconds before looping. The levels you encounter are Land of the Trees, Land of the Stone Buddhas, Land of the Cliffs, Cave of the Groat Green Grub, Forest of Mad Monks, At the Castle Gate, and battle the Stone Wizard, which is split into 2 levels. The bosses you encounter are Death Breath, and contrary to popular belief, she is not based on my wife despite having chipmunk cheeks and chronic halitosis. Spike, Horny Witch, oh I'm sorry, that's Horned Witch. Groat Green Grub. Big Baldy. Samurai Guard. And finally, the Stone Wizard, who you have to face twice. After trapping him, he escapes and a rooftop pursuit begins. You have to take him down a second time before finally rescuing Princess Margot. After defeating the Stone Wizard, a short ending is shown in which they thank you and appreciate your awesome ninja skills. Peace is finally returned to the castle and you will always be remembered. They also let you know that you are one rad dude. After this, the game is over. The arcade game was a moderate hit, and it was converted to a few home systems, including the more well-known NES version, which I will cover in just a few minutes. However, there were a few sequels that were released only in Japan for the Famicom. Here in the States, though, we didn't receive any commercials for Kid Niki, but there were some pretty cool ones released for the various sequels over in Japan.
ああ、いない。
うちのやんちゃどこ行ったのかしら。
さあ、ヒデを助けろ。面白時代活劇元祖やんちゃ丸。ゲームボーイだよ。
うちのやんちゃには無理ね。
やんちゃ丸カエル変幻象変幻はちゃめちゃ面白ファミコンソフト解決やんちゃ丸2
Kaiketsu Yachumaru 2 Karakuri Land appeared on the Famicom in 1991. You take on the role of Yancha Maru, who was back with his super spinning blade attempting to save the princess all over again. Thankfully, this game is easier to play than the original arcade game, perhaps a bit too easy. You now have 3 hits you can take before your untimely death. Similar to the arcade game, a number of bells are located at various points that give you a number of power-ups, including lightning and energy waves. These also include coins and regenerative health. Your sword also has an extra ability right out of the gate, allowing you to swing upwards and downwards. You can also change into a number of animals, including frogs, birds, and elephants. The graphics themselves have been totally redesigned, with Yancha Maru sporting a super deformed look. The levels themselves have also been given a complete makeover, with you exploring Karakuri Land, which is a demonic theme park, each one having its own theme. There are now 8 levels in total. All of the text is in Japanese, but there are ROM hacks that have converted the majority of the text into English. This is a lot of fun to play, and honestly, it looks more like a PC Engine game than a standard Famicom title. As I mentioned though, the game is a bit easy, but if you are a fan of these types of games, you should definitely check it out. The game made its debut on the portable market thanks to the release of Gonso Yancha Maru on the original Game Boy. This game plays more like its arcade big brother than the other 2 Famicom follow-ups. This is a whole new game with 12 levels spread across 4 distinct worlds. You still use your spinning blade, which has a slightly longer reach than the arcade game. The graphics use large, detailed sprites, with the level designs feeling a bit more like Super Mario, including breakable blocks which will occasionally drop various items. Most of these items include coins, which will grant you an extra life if you collect enough of them. There are also invincibility power-ups as well as throwing shurikens. The controls are nice and tight, and they don't have that slippery feel that the third game for the Famicom has. This is nowhere near as challenging as the arcade game, and once again, it's a lot of fun to play. Due to the success of the Famicom and Game Boy titles, Kaiketsu Yancha Maru 3 Taiketsu Saringen was released for the Famicom in 1993. The first thing you'll notice is that the art style has been changed once again, looking more like a comic strip or an early version of Super Mario World. The game seems to take cues from Mega Man, such as the boss battles and even the stone wizard who pilots a machine similar to Dr. Wily. Your main weapon of choice is no longer a spinning blade, but instead using a bow staff that can shoot projectiles and also offers a charged slash. However, you can use the staff to hook onto walls and platforms, giving you the ability to somersault in the opposite direction. It can also be used as a paddle in the underwater segments. You can perform a slide move with the staff as well. The majority of the power-ups from the second game are completely missing, but there are still plenty of bonus coins to collect. Something else that is new to the series is having to find a key before you can proceed to the next level. This time around, there are only 7 stages with a mini-boss at the end of each one. Similar to the previous game, there is a ROM hack that translates the game into English. It's fun to play, but its animation and scrolling lets it down. Everything is choppy and not quite as tight as the second game. There were only a few conversions made, and today, my friends, we have a first in this channel. We have one conversion that unleashes both farts and queefs, which is the Apple II version. The computer ports were done by Quicksilver Software, who really doesn't have that great of a track record. For starters, the screen does not scroll and the graphics are blocky, lacking very little detail. The animation is something that Terrence and Philip would be proud of, with our titular hero kind of skating across the ground. Everything from the arcade game for the most part is here, including some of the enemy layouts as well as the bosses, although obviously scaled back in size. The sound, though, is horrendous, with no music and only short, little pockets of air blasted right in your face. It controls decent enough, but there is only one fire button, so obviously sacrifices had to be made. The good old bread bin Commodore 64 version is pretty much a direct port of the Apple II's efforts, right down to its lack of scrolling and blocky, ugly sprites. Once again, the screen does not scroll, and for some strange reason there is no music. The SID chip was definitely not put through its paces, because the farts and queefs from the Apple II port make their triumphant debut, although they don't sound anywhere near as bad. It controls okay, but once again we only have one fire button. The version most people in North America are familiar with is the NES version. This was programmed by Data East themselves, and they did a spectacular job at converting it onto the humble 8-bit NES. Rather than 8 stages that you have to traverse, the game is split up into 15 and even includes some hidden areas. The sprites are large and well animated, and the screen scrolls just like the arcade game. All of the bosses have been included, as well as that catchy tune playing in the background. In the American version, Niki sports his punk rock hairdo, but if you look closely at the lives indicator, you will see he is sporting his Japanese do. There are even bonus items that were not found in the arcade game, such as ninja dolls, which provide you with an extra life, as well as ones that give you an extra hit before dying. All of the levels and bosses have been included, as well as the ending from the arcade game. This really is a great version of the game, so if you are a fan of Kid Niki, you might want to have a look. Kid Niki makes a cameo appearance in Irem's NES game, Kickle Cubicle. This trick also works on the Famicom version of the game. Kid Niki Radical Ninja was also released for the Nintendo Switch as part of their Arcade Archive series in January of 2018. And there you have it, folks, the history of Kid Niki Radical Ninja. The arcade game came and went like a fart in the wind, but that's not to say the game doesn't have its fans. I've always enjoyed this game, especially the arcade version, but I always found it quite difficult. If you've never had the chance to use your spinning sword, taking care of all kinds of various enemies, be sure and give this game a shot. You'll be glad you did. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.